And with that, we are done. All right. Hi there. Welcome, everybody, once again to Cast Iron Wednesday. This is a tradition that a lot of these smaller YouTube cooking channels have been doing now for the past several years, at least, as I'm sure you folks know that because that's why you're here. But nonetheless, yes, we've been doing a cast iron video on this channel here. We are at just about the fifth anniversary, in fact, 5 years. Good grief, I can't believe it's been 5 years doing this on this channel here. And there are a number of other YouTube channels out there as well that have been doing this for even longer. We play around with cast iron on Wednesdays because it's fun and because, well, hey, I mean, why not? After all, it's a hobby, and there are certainly worse things to do. And I can only appreciate other folks who are kind enough to indulge in this hobby and see how things are going. Okay, yeah, you might notice that there are people actually running around in the background. That's because we have family visiting tonight, including a baby, no less. So if you hear something in the background, chances are it's probably baby entertainment that they have on the TV. But nonetheless, what's important right now is the fact that you folks are here, and I can only thank you once again for showing up to everybody. Hello to William Hurt, and hello to JIR Finishes. Hello, Ronald Coward, and Christopher Rice, and Fatty Meats, and everybody else who has been kind enough to show up here once again here on Wednesday, because we are, yeah, as well, you get to see me putter around with cast iron in the kitchen. And hello, Flash 1999 as well. And Val's Black Cats Rules at a fire call. We'll be on when we're done. Well, I do hope everything's okay. I do remember you mentioning about being with the volunteer fire department, I believe. Fatty Meats, I just put a couple of banana breads in the oven. Well, that's not a bad way to spend a Wednesday evening. I'm certainly not complaining about that. And Lando Calrissian and Rocket Caver and quite a few other folks here as well, since I can see we're at 29 people and climbing, so things are off to a pretty good start here. Since nobody has mentioned anything about there being no sound, I think I can safely say that the sound is doing all right, and I'm glad to hear that. So, anyway, but at least if nothing else, this is not going to be too difficult of a dish we're doing tonight. I have made it before, although, man, time flies. Because we are starting to get into a few years at least since I've made some of these dishes, including this one tonight, where we are going to South Africa and making a dish that they call bunny chow. If you've been in my channel this long, you may know that a few years ago now, or at least a couple of years, I tried this for the first time and really pretty much took a great liking to it. So much so that I've made it several times, and I'm more than happy to make it again now because this is indeed one of those dishes you could make on a weeknight, as it is really no more than a big one pot stew here. And yes, there are not going to be any bunnies in this, although you can add rabbit or bunny to this dish if you really want to. So tonight, that also means we get to play with a particular piece of cast iron that I've said that I've shown a number of times on this channel, and that would be the 8 quart, no, the 8 liter South African potjie pot. Yeah, the one that a lot of people really like these because of the way they look and feel, and boy, they're certainly heavy enough, like a traditional medieval cast iron cauldron. But even though, in fact, this is in fact Asian made and was imported to South Africa for sale, and then from there to the United States, which it has been since in my kitchen since 2012. So I've already had this for 13 years. Oh, that's kind of what I mean by time is flying here. That's for sure. Anyway, all we have to do is take it off, and things are starting to, and we're about ready to get started already. Especially since, where did I put my phone? There it is. Especially since this is essentially one of those dishes where we just pretty much throw all the ingredients together and then simmer them until they are done. And that's not a bad way to do this. Let me see if I can get maybe a better view. There we go, so that you can see the inside as best as you can. All right, and okay, so pot heating up. Okay, so number of recipe. My quote for the recipe here: a number of recipes for bunny chow specifically say to use russet potatoes, probably because russets are the least expensive potatoes, and okay, this is why we should cut it into large pieces. All right, but now, if nothing else, I guess we are ready to get started here. Hello as well. Oh yeah, hello as well to Fuzzfork 8 and Radagast. Yeah, Pipcorn. Potjies actually have been getting pretty popular over the last several years or so. The real problem with them, of course, unfortunately, is the cost, because not just because prices on everything have been going up, but also because, as I just mentioned, they are imported from South Africa to the United States, and that does tend to make them more expensive, unfortunately. Still, this is the type of thing you could very well consider, especially with the holidays are just beginning to peek up over the horizon. I'm sorry to say. That means, that is the type of thing that some folks might consider to be a special gift on a holiday or a birthday or a wedding or the like. And in fact, I would say that for a lot of families over the centuries, in fact, a big cooking pot certainly sounds like the type of thing that very well might have been given as a wedding present, as an example. There is somebody on my channel who, about a year or so ago, he mentioned that he was lucky enough to acquire one, a huge number 4 size poiki, for only about $40 or so. Even though it did require a lot of cleaning up, he has since gotten a lot of use out of it. All right. Cynthia is having power outage. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Power outage because someone had a car crash and took out the power. Well, as long as the only thing damaged was the power transformer, as long as nobody was actually hurt in that. And let me see. Having said that, it is time now to start playing with our cast iron, which means I have got myself probably about 2 to 3 pounds of chicken cut up, and in they go. This is, of course, the browning stage, the one that almost every stew and quite a few other dishes start out with. Things like this, I realize I'm so glad I learned how. Not only am I so glad I learned how to cook, but also the fact that about 90% of cooking is actually not really that hard, as long as you're careful not to burn yourself, that is. Because all we really need to do is start out by browning the chicken pieces. I did use chicken breast in this case, largely because, again, the family that I'm serving for tends to prefer the white meat rather than the dark meat. So I am, of course, catering to their tastes. Yesterday, Fatty, I got a 10-inch large black rock at Home Goods for $40. Hey, that's not bad. Yeah, that's true. Home Goods, of course, is by TJ Maxx and Marshalls, and they often do have large cast iron at pretty good discounts. So I would say that's not bad at all. If I remember right, when I got my Black Rock 10-inch, I believe I paid roughly about $60 for it. So there you go. You got it at 1/3 off. So that is nothing to complain about. That particular one, the Black Lock, of course, is shaped just right that it makes a very good chef's skillet. And I can only hope you get a lot of use out of it in that way. Not a bad price. Yes, exactly. So of course, the other thing, though, about these poikies is, again, other than their look, other than the fact that they look good, um, you can pretty much use a standard Dutch oven to make almost anything that you could make in a poikie. Besides the fancy look to this pot, the other thing I will say is that it is very deep, probably much deeper than a typical Dutch oven. So as such, this is good for things like deep frying and the like. So yeah, the shape is indeed very appealing to it. And as I mentioned in the title of this video, what I'm doing essentially is Potjiekos. which is a term from South Africa. That doesn't just involve really the type of dish. In fact, I suppose genuine folks from South Africa, well, even though bunny chow also comes from South Africa, I'm not sure if they would consider this to be potjiekos. But then again, potjiekos is more than just the actual dish that you're cooking too. It's also the experience in that potjiekos is really pretty much like a casual party type of has a party type of atmosphere to it, because the other important thing about that, besides actually cooking, is that the family gathers around the potjie and just basically spends time BSing and relaxing and enjoying themselves, preferably drinking beer. The beer part is important, as anybody who does potjiekos will certainly tell you that. So that's not a bad thing to do either. In this case, though, my family actually is busy entertaining a little toddler, so that means there's definitely not going to be any beer in here tonight, unfortunately. Maybe much later when the baby is asleep. I wondered how they had it cheaper than the large side. Yeah, again, that's how that's actually pretty common for home goods and TJ Maxx. Usually they are often selling large seconds, but there's certainly nothing wrong. Anybody who has got the large seconds know that there is rarely anything ever wrong with it. I mean, about 90% of the time, the items from the large that go into their seconds pile are might just have maybe a little bit of a blemish in the seasoning and not much more than that. A few instances have had an actual very minor defect to them, like maybe like a tiny little pinhole, not that doesn't even penetrate the whole surface, things like that. Okay, yeah. I thought that was a cat. Oh, was that chicken breast or thigh? In this case, this is chicken breast. If I had a choice, I would use thigh because it's cheaper. But as stated, I am catering to a family that does prefer the white meat in their chicken. Let me see. While we're at it, I think I will cover this for a couple of minutes. Take a little note. I do hope the background noise is not showing up too much on this mic. Okay. And add chicken pieces. And now here, okay, then from here we just start throwing everything in. I raised my own chickens this year. I have thighs and legs left. So, yeah, exactly. You can see you're in the same position that I am. Rocket Caver, Mrs. R and I have bought a lot from the lodge second section. Absolutely. I've bought quite a few large second pieces myself, and there's no problem at all with them, which is why I certainly don't have a problem with finding large seconds at places like Home Goods. I would definitely congratulate you on getting a good deal with that. Ah, I decided to make this particular dish today because really it's like the weather has definitely changed since it was 7 days ago. I mean, no, we have not gotten into fall yet, but like it or not, I think we're starting to see a taste of it, because 7 days ago it was like about 90 degrees here in this chicken. Everybody was chicken in this kitchen. Everybody was sweltering. It was really, really hot, and yet I still chose to make lasagna last week. On the other hand, the temperature is probably now anywhere between 20 to almost 30 degrees lower than it was before, than it was last week. Namely, that we are in the probably 60s and 70s rather than the 90s right now. In fact, I believe we might even be in the 50s by now at this time of evening. It has been giving a heavy and steady rain all day. The type of day when nobody really wants to be out. Um, but this is only temporary. My understanding is that it is going to clear up by tomorrow or so. There does seem to be a fair amount of liquid here from this chicken. So I think I had better wait and let the liquid dissolve. Um, that's one thing. For a long time, I've been draining the liquid from my chicken and from my burgers. And folks had said that really what you should do is just be patient and let it dissolve, or let the water evaporate. So for me, it's always been a toss up of whether I would do that, let it evaporate, or just simply drain it. Rocky Caver, we found a shallow fish fryer last night for $30. Nice. Needs some work and is slightly warped, but couldn't pass it up. Well, I don't blame you. The shallow fish fryer is also one of my favorite pans. There's an outlet mall not too far away. I'll check if there's a lodge store there. I'm not sure if there are that many lodge stores down there, even in the deep south. I think there are only a few of them. Finally, the Walmarts here are selling a larger selection of lodge. Well, that's actually good news in itself, and I am glad to hear that. I'm thinking I might actually just simply, instead of taking my time, I think I might actually try draining some of this liquid, which means I need to get myself a proper scoop for that. Ugh. And of course, as noted in the description of this video, folks are of course feel free to talk about their own cast iron, just like Rocket Caver here has been doing, talking about the deals that he's been scoring, and congratulations on that. I mean, folks here feel free as well to ask and answer questions about their own cast iron collections, whether you're having difficulty seasoning or cooking advice, for what little advice I could be able to give, or even if you have a cast iron pan that that happens to a lot of people. I inherited this one from my great grandmother, and I'd really like to know what it is. That has become quite a fad and a trend here on the internet as well. Identifying old cast iron. That, of course, has also been the source of quite a few arguments. But despite the arguments, there has been a lot of historical information brought to light, at least in regards to the history of cast iron, and I, for one, am quite happy about that. Don't like, not bad for a starter. Target usually has a lodge section. Most Ace Hardware stores have a big lodge section. My Sam's Club doesn't have the old style pizza pan. Oh yeah, I saw that apparently they were having what they called an exclusive at Sam's Club, which I thought to be rather amusing for them to describe it as an exclusive, because what it seems to suggest is that Lodge is probably clearing out a lot of their backlog of the old style pizza pan, and so sending it over to Sam's Club. Well, why not? I mean, after all, it makes them some revenue. I'm not. No, they are still producing the old style pizza pan. I'm not sure if they are going to be discontinuing it or not. I guess it really depends on how well the newer style pizza pan that they introduced just a few years ago has been selling. All right. Yeah, actually, yeah, taking this out is good because I can add it back in later on when we're supposed to add chicken broth. So that's not a bad thing at all. Lodge never made the shallow fish fryer, did they? The shallow fish fryer, the oval fish fryer that is seen quite often was made largely by Birmingham Stove and Range. Lodge did in fact make a very large fish fryer pan, one that was actually based on the style of a radio flyer wagon. I'm not sure if it was radio flyer or a different brand. A wagon, an actual kid's wagon, which was much bigger than the BSNR fish fryer. But they also seem to be a lot less commonly found than the BSNR shallow fish fryer. Cracker Barrel is also changing their look. Their new look also includes interior designs, which is big big turnoff to me. Guess they hired woke folks. Okay. Well, yeah, I do know that Cracker Barrel is definitely changing their design. I'm not going to get into an argument over that stupid term woke. Okay, neither does my Sans. However, Walmart has added several large pans. Okay, I've made enough to make took out enough broth to make a bowl of chicken soup. Well, that like I said, I'm not going to throw this out. I am going to put it back in later on when it is time to add the chicken broth. So we are still not doing too badly. Let me see here. The Ace where I work has a good large display. Okay, at this point, now that we have done this, now it's time to start throwing in a couple of other basic ingredients, and that would include one onion, diced and chopped, of course. These are pretty much the necessities, the mirepoix, I guess you could say, of cooking. Diced onion. And because this dish actually comes, well, not exactly from India, but it was put together by folks who emigrated to South Africa from India. So that technically, I guess, does make this an easy dish, an Indian dish. And to that means now we've got about, it says here, half a teaspoon of ground ginger. In this case, I am using what I've been using lately, and that is ginger paste, which I've actually been quite satisfied with the stuff. It practically has the intensity and consistency of ginger because it is ginger. I mean, no denying that. I can keep it in the fridge much longer than fresh ginger. So I consider this to be a decent compromise. And yeah, I would still say that this stuff is more intense than ginger powder, so we're not doing too badly at all. Okay. Now that we have, oh yeah, and then of course some minced garlic, all of which again are all of these are necessities. Mentions here 2 to 3 of these. Well, I think we can hear the baby in the background. But again, with as I said, as long as it doesn't drown out the rest of this, my own voice here in the microphone, then we shouldn't be too bad. They're doing their best to keep her calm and happy. Notice the sound has stopped already. Put all this together, and then here's another sign that this is a dish from India because we're about to throw in the C's. All the spices beginning with C. Well, not all of them, but the most popular ones. Starting with one cinnamon stick. Plop. Actually, careful. Plop. Okay. Next, 1 tablespoon or more of curry. Where, as you know, again in India, it's like they pretty much they they almost treat curry like cocaine in that there's never any shortage of it. Pretty much any recipe that calls for curry calls for a lot of curry. Oh yeah, and I can smell that already too. Then from there, the next C is cumin. Not as much as the curry. It mentions about half a teaspoon of cumin. Here's the half teaspoon of cumin. And after that, the next C is coriander powder. And this one, we do about a teaspoon of ground coriander. Like this, yeah, coriander has a really nice smell to it. Not savory or sweet, but it definitely has its own unique smell. There's coriander, so I will not be shy with the coriander. And then one of my favorite spices, cardamom. Half a teaspoon of ground cardamom. Between that and the ginger, it will definitely give a little bit of a kick to this. And yes, we are going to be adding yet another C as well. So ground cardamom. I actually like grinding my own cardamom just because it gives it a more intense and fresh flavor. Where is Rick? He okay? Yeah. The baby in the background is barely noticeable. Okay, well, that's good to hear. I'm glad to hear that. Do you have bread bowls for your bunny chow, or will you serve it over rice? I think I'm going to do both. Namely, that once we get all of this in the pot and simmering, I will prepare a pot of rice. I don't have bread bowls, unfortunately. I'm going to have to fake it with a loaf of bread. Okay, but anyway, so far the last thing was the cardamom. Yeah, we're down to 61 degrees according to the thermostat. So definitely we are at something like about 30 degrees cooler than we were last week. Okay, after the cardamom, well, the next one is not a C. However, it's another one of my favorite spices, and that would be the smoked paprika. Of course, it generally calls for just paprika, but I will gladly use smoked paprika anytime it calls for regular paprika. 1 teaspoon smoked paprika, heaping teaspoon, of course. You can also tell it's an Indian dish because it has 500 spices to it, and there's a god to each one. And then finally, it mentions half a teaspoon of cayenne because, of course, you have to have some kick to it. Given how this family likes jerk seasoning, I'm debating whether I should increase that to a full teaspoon of cayenne. But nah, they can always add more hot sauce if they want. So we've got half a teaspoon of cayenne. And then finally, we just get into 1 teaspoon of salt. That should be enough. 1 teaspoon of ground black pepper. That should be enough one of these days. And that takes care of the spices. We're almost at the point already. However, I should definitely mix all of these around to mix it into the chicken. Nice scent to it already. Then from here, we get to open up a couple of cans, which I did not do because I actually did not have time in my prep work. One of which is a can of garbanzo beans. Garbanzo beans are often used as a meat substitute. And of all the things I've seen as meat substitutes, this might actually be a decent veggie substitute for meat. In that it does have, even though they're beans, they certainly do have a texture that might remind you of meat. And what's more, they have a nice earthy flavor of their own. No, they don't taste like meat. They taste like garbanzo beans. But there's nothing wrong with that because the flavor of this is pretty good in itself. Yes, I did throw in the water too. Next. Okay, 1 can of diced tomatoes. And here we go again. This means I'm using tomatoes in bare cast iron. Well, first of all, I mean, we've got so many other ingredients in here, and we're not smothering this in the tomatoes. So between that, plus the fact that this is indeed a well-seasoned pot, that's why I'm not worried about this one particular can of tomatoes having any significant effect on the seasoning of this pot. All right. Yeah, and then once this is all done, really, we don't have much to do but prepare the rice. This is what I meant by this being the type of dish you could prepare on a work night, because once you throw all these ingredients together in the pot, you literally just simmer it until it's done. Didn't this get the open the can properly? Hold on. Ugh, come on. It's always one, isn't it? Yeah, there's definitely okay. Maybe this can is bent or something. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's try. Okay, we have to go around, and we'll go around. Okay, I have to get this can lid off. All right, there we go. Got it. Just gotta be careful. All right. And that is the worst of it. There's one other ingredient that I'm actually not including tonight, largely because it's something of an acquired taste, and that would be fenugreek, aka methane. That's actually commonly used with bunny chow. But as I said, the taste of fenugreek is something that if a family has not tried it before, it might not appeal to them. So I'm intentionally leaving this one out and kind of playing it safe here. I usually don't worry about tomatoes affecting seasoning. I found that uh, if acid causes seasoning to come loose, it wasn't well adhered layer in the first place and was bound to come loose anyway. That's a good way to describe it. Okay. My great grandma boiled garbanzo beans and added sugar and milk for breakfast. That doesn't sound too badly. Okay, and finally, the last thing are the potatoes. A pound of russet potatoes, which will definitely add, you know, thicken the stew as well as make it more filling. So with all of that, this does not smell bad at all. And from here, now it's time to throw the chicken broth or chicken stock back in, including what I took out before. As well as some additional chicken broth. Mentions about 2 to 3 cups of chicken stock or chicken broth. So between that and this, and there we go. The last thing is it also mentions some flour to thicken the stew, but I don't think we need to do that just yet. Recipe for pan, you gotta finally peel and crush garlic cloves. Okay, when the pot is good and hot, add, okay, enough so the meat is almost entirely covered. It does say to add flour and stir it in, and then we cover it and stew it. All right. That means I just need to get my flour here. And this is the last thing. After this, all we have to do is start preparing rice. Probably more than enough. All right. Everything is in. So we just simply cover it, and bam. And that, it takes care of that. Which means I can put my phone back into my pockets. All right. Good night, Christopher Rice. I do hope you're having a good night there. Tomatoes or red sauce only affects the seasoning if you leave it overnight and not wash it. Yes, that is definitely a bit of truth right there. Lando Kilrisian. Oh yeah, that's right. Thumbs up. Okay, and well, yes. You can add a quarter teaspoon of baking soda to a can of tomatoes to neutralize some of the acid. That or sugar, of course. Tomatoes and sauce. Okay. And hello as well to Kathleen Tripp. Thank you as well for showing up here. I like to boil my chicken broth before adding it to the pot. It speeds up the cooking. Well, there is that. I mean, all we have to do at this point now is just simmer it until it's all done. Although that's why the other thing we need to do is to once again prepare some rice. But as mentioned already, this particular stew is a South African street food, which means it was one of those things that was only recently invented, like maybe within the last 2 or 3 decades or so. So although it has definitely caught fire in South Africa, in that it is a very, very popular street food, to the point where if people say they're going to grab a bunny for lunch, this is probably what they're going to get. This actually is an interesting little story in that why it's called bunny chow, but there are no bunnies in it. This actually has more to do with cultural, I guess, accents and slang and language more than anything else. Because as I mentioned, um, within the last 2 or 3 decades or so, a fair number or a large number of persons have emigrated from India to South Africa, in particular the Durban area of South Africa. So you know how it's like in some places. You can go to a Portuguese neighborhood or an Italian neighborhood or a Chinese neighborhood. It's similar to that there in South Africa. And quite a few of these folks from India, it seems like, have set themselves up as street food vendors. Very common there in that particular area. Again, kind of like something that's happening in New York. In New York City, there are quite a few halal food carts out there selling that kind of halal food, and this is in a manner similar to that. They in India, they actually not India, in South Africa, they do have a name, and as far as I know, no, this is not an insult, just a description of the ethnicity of these particular street vendors, and they call them bania, which is Bania. In fact, I think I'll even type that out in the chat for you. Bania, banya. And especially when you consider the typical accent used all throughout South Africa, that easily, instead of banya, like I just pronounced it, it gives it more like a bunya, ooh, bunya. So, and so as a result, I mean, we're talking bunya, which means that especially if it's repeated many, many times by many, many thousands of people, that particular word tends to be worn down or changed slightly until so that instead of bunya, it becomes bunny, meaning that you're getting yourself a bunny for lunch. And so lo and behold, there you are, bunny chow. That is why in South Africa you can get bunny chow that has no bunny in it. In fact, probably the most popular meat used in bunny chow is lamb. But of course, lamb is a lot more expensive here in the United States. So most of the time when I make bunny chow, I go with the chicken. White, brown, jasmine, basmati. I would say, especially since this is an Indian dish, I would probably seriously consider doing basmati rice tonight. And that is definitely starting to sound more and more like a plan. One little thing, though, is that I have not yet cleaned out the potato peels yet from my sink from when I made, from when I peeled the potatoes. So I guess I had better get rid of these right now and then wash my hands, of course. Okay. So far, so good. I mean, that's why, as they say, you should really clean up as you are cooking so that there'll be a lot less mess to clean up afterwards. Actually, what I can do is it this way. There we go. Do this. And for those of you who say I'm being unsanitary, number one, this is my kitchen. Number two, I am washing my hands right now. And number three, I'm also washing the sink. I don't have restaurant sanitizer. That's something I should probably consider getting, in fact. However, what I do have is a decently clean sink. There we are. And that should be clean enough to make some rice. When I see potato peels, I see potential compost. I'm turning into my dad faster than slower. Yeah, well, I know. When you become your parents, that's when you know you've grown up. Have you ever thought of polishing your Magnolite pot? Good luck with subsequent gifts of sandpaper, followed by Mother's Mag. I have polished my Magnolite pot, although I do admit it's been at least a couple of years. And yes, I do in fact have Mother's Mag. It's a really good aluminum polish too. So that is certainly something I would want to recommend. Okay, how are we going to do this now? Okay, that means I've got to dig out one more bowl. And I do not want to trip over this cord. Yikes, I also don't want to leave this open, right? Because I don't want the cats getting out tonight. Fortunately, the cats are hiding upstairs, so I know we don't have anything to worry about there. Ugh. All right. Seriously? Excuse me? Nobody out back. Okay. So it's got to be out front. All right. While we're here, let's dig out, as you say. Here it is. Basmati rice. That is what we'll be serving along with bread for our bunny chow tonight. I've managed to live 52 years cleaning my sink just as you clean yours, yes, and I'm not dead yet either. I know there are, I mean, yeah, I do have to admit, there are real reasons for a lot of those sanitary laws, especially involving restaurants, considering that there are a lot of places out there that do abuse the law. So I'm certainly not going to fault them for that. On the other hand, as you say, this should be good enough with any luck. Okay, 3/4, 1 cup. All right. My 1 cup is still drying off from earlier, so I'm gonna have to do with a 3/4 cup. So that would mean 4 3/4 cups will give us 3 cups of rice. Math is hard. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Yeah, I'm going to be making 3 cups of jasmine rice because folks here like rice. And recently, they've only recently discovered basmati rice. Did I say jasmine? I do mean I am doing basmati. Congratulations, Grid 4124. My uncle found me an oval roaster in a dumpster of all places. Really, Lando Calrissian. That is quite a that was quite a find right there as well. And congratulations for that. Okay, I thought the same thing. I picked up an 8-quart Magnolite at a flea market for $18. Nice. Yeah, that's not a bad score in itself either. So, yeah, again, I really offer my congratulations to you, those who are able to get a decent score like that. Are you putting the rice in an iron rice cooker? Well, in fact, this is why we're talking about aluminum and Magnolite. I'm going to be cooking this in my aluminum pot. I know that's sacrilege, but I have found this Wagner Magnolite aluminum Dutch oven to be the best rice cooker I've ever owned. And what I do for washing my rice is, well, not quite the same as the way most folks do it, but I'm doing it in this manner really to save water or conserve water more than anything else. Because by doing this, I can actually use the water twice instead of just simply letting it run down the sink. Just simply run my fingers through the rice, maybe about a dozen times or so. The water is all very cloudy right now, and that is number 1. And now we just repeat. Here comes number 2. Okay, something else going on? All right, my doorbell is suddenly going off like crazy. Is that the front or the back? All right, that's the back, huh? Okay. It was the front? All right. Front door. Okay. Anyway, that's another reason why I'm glad I did this in a bowl. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Not that I really have to count them, but then again, I'm anal. So there's number 2. Number 3. And the thing is that whether or not you use an electric rice cooker, you still have to wash the rice in advance. Folks still consider it a pain, but I don't think I have yet to see a rice cooker that will wash your rice as well as actually cook it. Of course, you consider you'd have to actually hook that up to a hose on your sink or fill it up like a coffee maker in order to do that. So one way or another, they still do not have an automatic rice washer and rice cooker. Okay, there we go. That's 3. And the last time. Also, notice all the water, all the rice at least has been staying here in this little sieve. So nothing from the sink has gotten into the rice. So I still took the step of washing out the sink. So again, this is definitely going to be clean rice. And we have done this 4 times. And at this point, this rice is definitely washed. You can see while the water is not crystal clear, it is a lot more clear than it was in the first place. So that means now it's time to get out the rice cooker, which is in fact a Wagner ware. Magnalite Dutch oven. Yes, it's still this one. It's not the vintage one that I still have not yet finished cleaning. I'm hoping yet again, this might be a project this weekend, but for now, I have gotten so much use out of this one because as I said, oops, that was smart. Because as I said, this is the best rice cooker I have ever owned. Flop. Oh, and by the way, washing out the rice, you notice practically no sticking. So far, so good. Which means the next thing I have to do, since I'm doing 3 cups of rice, got to do a little bit of math here because 2 cups of rice, 3 cups of water. So therefore, 2 cups of rice, 4 cup, no, that's right. Okay, 3 cups of water, 4 cups of water. We're talking roughly about 4.5, maybe almost 5 cups of water. Yeah, that's right. That is about right. Okay. Of course, actually, I don't even have to worry because all I really need to do is use the same cup. Sorry. All I need to do is use the same cup. So, and that pretty much, I don't have to measure out fancy amounts of water with this. I used 3 cups. No, I used 4 cups of this. Okay. So that's different from 3. Okay. So 2 cups would be 3. So that means 6 cups of 6 3/4 cups. There we go. Do the math. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The reason why I based it that way is 6. My rule is 2 cups of rice, 3 cups of water. I used 4 cups of rice, so double that. 6 cups of water? Yeah, that's right. Okay. All right. Now that we've finally done that, it's time to head over to the sink, stove, and start preparing our rice. Man, this is so hard. As you can see, I'm really breaking up a sweat here, aren't I? Good choice with the swing away can opener. Oh, well, yeah. Like everything else, I do have stories behind these, even if this is a silly little story. This particular one I got as a memento on the very last day I pretty much before I left Massachusetts for good and moved here permanently to New York. I had returned to Massachusetts, in fact, because I had a legal matter that was involving lawyers, and that court case was finally won, and so everything was done, and I had really no reason to come back to Massachusetts. And since that time, in fact, I have come back to Massachusetts all of once. And on that day, I went to a restaurant store back near where I used to live, and I found this as a souvenir. So this is indeed a souvenir of my time in Massachusetts. And like you said, it is a swing away can opener. I only wash Asian style short grain rice because removing the starch enhances the stickiness. Rice washing is a cultural behavior, if anything. I will disagree as far as basmati rice is concerned because I have had unwashed basmati rice and it doesn't taste the same. There is definitely a difference in taste with basmati rice. And so I find it absolutely necessary with basmati rice in particular to wash the rice. So I will politely disagree with that. Swing light, yes, a swing away can opener. That's what we were talking about. Fatty meats. I'm in Massachusetts, and congratulations. In some ways, I do miss Massachusetts. Unfortunately, among other things, I've been priced out of Massachusetts by the rental situation. It became simply too expensive to live in Massachusetts, and that's why I ended up moving here to New York. And I have a dear friend who's lived here in New York all her life, and she says that I just happened to come to New York from one of the few states where it's more expensive to live than New York. So in that way, I am. Oh yeah, the notorious red swing line. I guess you're talking about the stapler. Excuse me, I think you have my stapler. No, it is not a red swing line stapler. I think I still have one of those upstairs. I don't have a swing away. I will look for one. I would definitely recommend it, Radagast. Essentially, I was plain sick and tired of crappy can openers because, yeah, what can you say? They are a pain in the pita bread to use, and it seemed like no matter what, I ended up with a crappy can opener. I mean, I tried OXO. I tried basically three or four brands of can opener that you get at places like Walmart and the like, and all of them pretty much just bit the dust. I got sick of it, and so I really went out looking for an industrial strength can opener, and that was when there at that time I went to an actual restaurant store and got that swing away can opener, and so far I have loved it. I believe Swing Away is out of business and is now called Easy Does It. I hope that's not the case. I'm going to have to look that up and see if that is true. Because it seems like whenever a company goes out of business like that and is acquired by another company, there is a significant drop in quality. And I certainly hope that's not the case here. But nonetheless, here we have what we need. On one hand, let's move back to the cast iron, which, as you can see, is steaming up nicely here. And on the other hand, we've got a pot of basmati rice. Yeah, rice will cook better if you turn the heat on. Yeah, that would be a good idea, wouldn't it? Fortunately, I do have the heat on. I did remember to turn on the heat this time. So yes, this is actually going to cook. I've done that, and I do believe I've done that several times here on live. But no, fortunately, this time I did remember to turn on the heat. I think it's the reverse. Easy Does It uses the old machines used by Swing Away and is of the same quality. Really, that's also interesting too. I have a red, blue, and black and white Swing Away. Nice. Rad stuffed pepper. Oh, rad stuffed peppers rock. Made a boatload weekend and froze many. Ooh, that all sounds good too. Val is back and safe. Well, I'm glad to hear that, and I hope the fire emergency wasn't too serious either. As for what we're doing on our end, well, at this point, I'm at the point here where I'm just basically, filling time while the stew boils in the cast iron pot, which is a situation that you're in quite often when you're cooking cast iron. I mean, I could mention, even though we've talked about this before, the fact that this is a best duty potjie. And we have recently learned here on this channel, after doing some research, that Best Duty started out as an African cast iron foundry. They made their own cast iron right there in Africa. However, after a while, after maybe about 10 or 15 years or so, they stopped making their own cast iron, and they were instead supplied with Asian made cast iron from a supplier who finally ended up buying out the company roughly maybe around in the early 2000s or so. So Best Duty started out with South African cast iron, but has been producing in Asian made cast iron, or importing it rather, for a long time. On the other hand, the Asian made cast iron, there's still nothing wrong with it, and that's exactly what this is here. As I mentioned, I acquired this particular pot back in 2012. I've been making regular use of it. It is one of my favorite kitchen items, not just for the way it looks, but also for the way it cooks. And I certainly have no intention of ever getting rid of this particular cast iron pot here, Asian made or otherwise. I grow gypsy peppers, and they're great for stuffing in everything. Someone tried to park a car on a porch. Oh, that sounds interesting there. Well, if the worst thing that happened was simply that they parked on the porch, then that's not so bad. Again, the main concern is that if no one was hurt, and I certainly hope that's the case. All right, at this point, it does look like the water is starting to boil. Let's move the light over a little bit. Yeah, I'd say we're at the point right now where, in fact, I do believe this water is boiling. That means now we simply put on the lid, turn the temperature down to low, and simmer till done. I thought that part was South African. Yes, it is. It is indeed. Actually, it was. I mean, as I said, even though it was made in Asia and imported into South Africa, Best Duty is a South African company. So it is. So this is still a South African potjie, even if it was originally made in Asia and imported into South Africa. It uses the size numbers that South African pots use, which are vastly different from what they have here in the United States. They start with like a 1/2 size, which is apparently 1 pint in size or so, and then those numbers they rapidly increase in size to the point where this is a number 3 potjie, which is roughly about 8 liters in size, and that makes it about 9 quarts in volume. And these things here go to humongous sizes. We're talking like, I believe the largest size potjie is roughly like maybe a size 25 or so, which my understanding is maybe like a 60 or 70 liter cast iron pot. So that is one heck of a big pot. I don't think it's as big as the largest jambalaya pots, which I do understand can get into the 30-gallon size or even bigger. And the 30-gallon size is about 120 quarts. But still, a 70-liter cast iron potjie is nothing to sneeze at. I grew these huge Italian green peppers along with traditional bells, all good. Some poblanos for me too. That's an I'm it all sounds good to me, Mark Sieber. I'm sure your family is eating quite well, and you're probably never going to be satisfied with store-bought peppers because of that. I don't think it matters to me where foreign cast iron is made, China or otherwise. I prefer American made simply to support local industry. Well, of course, most of the American cast iron industry is unfortunately gone, except for large cast iron. And of course, the new, smaller, elite cast iron makers that have all grown up around the past decade or so. So all of this is indeed good reason to buy American, but of course, the problem is that most of that can be expensive. Large cast iron is indeed affordable, and even then, there is Asian cast iron that is less expensive than large. In many instances, of course, you get what you pay for. And that, of course, is a very long and complicated story that quite a few of us are familiar with, regardless. I was confused as to what the equivalent size would be to a 6-quart Dutch oven with Best Duty. I looked up the measurements. Let me see. Number 2, I think, is actually smaller than 6 quarts or 6 liters. So I would really have to find out what the exact measurement is. Let me see. I think I will break out my phone and type or speak into Google, say volume of a number 2 sized South African, and I'm going to have to spell potjie because I know they're not going to, I know that this voice app is not going to spell it right. Potjie. And it says here, sign into Google. Cancel that. I'm not trying to sign into Google. Did you mean a number 2 size South African potjie? Come on, here it is. Actually, I think you called it. A typical number two size South African potjie pot has a volume of 6 liters. This size is often recommended for serving around 6 to 8 people or even up to 10, depending on whether side dishes are served. So that answers that. If you want a 6 quart potjie, 6 liters is slightly larger than that. So it sounds like you want yourself a number two size potjie. And I certainly hope that helps. Best duty pots are not cheap. Nothing is cheap these days. That's true. And in fact, as I mentioned already, I've had this particular one in my kitchen for 13 years now. Wow, 13 years. I still remember it was back in the summer of 2012. That was when I did indeed learn about potjie pots, and that was when I had this burning desire to get one. I did a video recently, you may remember, of those cast iron pieces that I paid over $100 each for, just because it seems like maybe about once a year or so, I get what I just described, a burning desire to get one. And then in that case, it's not that money is no object, but I did in fact end up paying just about $100, and this was back in 2012 for this number three size flat bottom potjie. And actually, the flat they call it the plat plat potjie, because just that it does not have any legs. This I found is not a common design for the potjie. The vast majority of them out there do have legs. So I actually got an oddball when I got this particular one. But yes, I do remember it cost me about $100. And because I bought it off of Amazon, then that meant shipping was free. So, on the whole, I do not think I got myself a bad deal with that, especially since I've gotten an enormous amount of use out of this particular cast iron pot. I've already sung its praises to the heavens for good reason. This thing is really heavy and really thick. It does a really good job making things like what I'm making right now. So I consider that $100 to be a worthwhile investment. If you were to look for a best duty potjie today, I would hazard a guess that this one might run you more towards the order of $150 or so. I might be wrong, but I'm not sure. All right. Remember, they can cross pollinate. Oh, you're talking about the peppers, not the cast iron. Even though it's been said in some instances that the cast iron seems to breed by itself. You start out with one and then two, and then suddenly you have a whole collection of cast iron. Meanwhile, at this point, things are looking nicely already. Not bad at all. Not bad for a starter. Let me try to get a little bit more of a close-up for you folks. This is looking not too bad at all. I'd say at this point, probably by about the time the rice is done, it looks like this is going to be done. Nice smell to it, too. Maybe in a few minutes or so, I think I'll call in a family member to do a taste test and argue and debate on whether or not I should add more spices to this. They'll probably say yes. My grandpa found the cross pollinate when he saved seeds from his gypsy peppers. My cast iron grew all by itself. Yes, exactly. That's what I mean, and that's why we call it cast ironitis, because it does seem like sometimes that your cast iron pots just simply breed on their own. It's like, when did I get that? And yes, I have had to ask that to myself more than a few times. On the other hand, things like this particular pot here, I am not going to forget, simply because it's been so enormously useful, something that I'm proud to show off, both to family and friends, as well as strangers. So again, I have a lot of pieces in my collection that I call my favorites because, well, I mean, that's one reason why they're in my collection. I'm glad to have them and I'm glad to use them. Um, and I have been asked more than a few times, what is your favorite piece of cast iron? And I can't really answer that simply because it really depends on the situation more than anything else. I mean, if I were to make a pot of stew, for instance, I think this would be my number one choice to go for. Not just for this, but really, I've made many other stews in this potjie. I've made Boston baked beans in this. I did deep frying in this particular one not too long ago. And of course, on the other hand, there are other things that if I wanted to make a cake, for instance, I would go for my cast iron bundt pan. And naturally, of course, there is the good old cast iron skillet, which still can't be beat for searing up a steak, as far as I'm concerned. All right. I find myself buying peppers and prepping them for tacos and soups and such over the winter. Okay, if you leave the cast iron stored too close, then they will multiply. Yeah, best duty potjie with lid, flat bottom, $100. Really? So you found one for $100 now, Val? Well, that's not bad. I'm actually impressed. Not for other reasons that I'm not sure if that means if I overpaid back 13 years ago, or simply the price has not gone up. The more I think of it, I'm not sure if either of those are correct because prices have gone up on everything. But even though I have been waxing poetic here about this potjie, I will say again that if you have yourself a nice, decent, big cast iron Dutch oven in your collection, you can do just about anything that this potjie can do. You can make this bunny chow in your Dutch oven, and it will probably turn out as good, if not better. I paid over 100 used. Oh, well, I maybe that was the difference. I actually got mine brand new off of Amazon, whereas you got yours used. Well, even so, I mean, again, I have said so many good things about this potjie that I would still consider this to be, still consider $100 used to be a good investment. Okay. I think we're at about the time. Let me see. Since one person is busy, I guess I'm gonna have to see who else I can find to volunteer as a taste tester for this. And yeah, you're busy right now, I know. So I guess that means it's gonna have to be. I do believe you were in our live video. You were on our live chat last week, Makira. Would you be kind enough to take a moment and do a taste test? She is looking at her phone and she doesn't seem too interested. All right. Okay. Boy, I'm trying to get these people to try this and I'm not having much luck. You interested in doing a taste test? Well, you get to taste some food. So, all right. Okay. Then let's see what we think. Needless to say, this is hot, 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 hot. So be sure to blow on it first before before you try it, seeing whether you might like it or whether you think I might need to add more, or just take hold the whole spoon, or whether you think more seasoning might need to be added to it. Yeah, like I said, it is hot, hot, hot. I'm gonna be serving this over. Yes, as in more seasoning. What kind do you think? Salt. Okay, that's easy enough. And thank you for saying so. I'll just put a little dab of salt on that. Okay. That's a potato anyway. Like I said, I will be serving this both in bread and rice. I can add more hot sauce and put more heat in it if you want, for instance.
More curry.
More curry? Okay, there's a good sign
Wait,
for you.
hold on. That's actually one.
Yeah, we're getting a third opinion here. So one person says more salt, another person says more curry, but now before I add more curry, they're getting a third opinion.
Yeah, more spice.
More spice, huh?
Way
Okay.
more spice.
Way more spice. All right.
Spice.
Okay. I
Curry and hot.
okay. I, all right. Well, they all want more seasoning, so I guess I'm just gonna have to throw in another serving of the spices that I did before. But I am so glad I asked for their opinion first. All right. Let's try to get this camera a little closer again. At the same time, I don't want to steam up the camera either. Dig up the recipe once again. And see what we get here. Okay, we start with another tablespoon of curry. So yeah, there's definitely going to be more curry in it. Where did I put the curry? Oh, here it is. I'm essentially doubling the amount of spice that or seasoning that I added, which means another heaping tablespoon of curry. And from here, half a teaspoon of cumin. Maybe I should throw some cinnamon powder in there as well as the cinnamon stick. Half a teaspoon of cumin. I'm going to make it a heaping half teaspoon now. Okay, then 1 teaspoon of ground coriander. Teaspoon of ground coriander. Although, again, I am so glad I asked. Ground coriander. Another half teaspoon of cardamom. That should help spice things up. Cardamom should certainly help. Okay. About this much. Another teaspoon of smoked paprika. Here's the part with the cayenne. And based on what they say, I might even add a teaspoon of cayenne so that this will definitely put some hot into it. These folks here are not afraid of hot sauce. So here's a teaspoon of cayenne. All right. And then from here, more salt. Then, oh yeah, black pepper, ground black pepper. And that takes care of the spices. So let's mix all of this together. Especially since the stew has thickened up, I think I will throw a little bit more cinnamon in there because there is a cinnamon stick simmering in there too. Holy cow, this has suddenly gotten thick too. All right. Let's go with a little bit, not too much cinnamon, but a little bit more. That's probably enough. And everything's mixed all together. This is definitely thick enough too. I like that. This is not a soup. This is definitely a very thick stew now. All right. Okay, taste test number 2, if anybody doesn't mind. Because we are getting to that time. And in fact, if this is the case, then I think we should be all set. However, also, it seems like the chicken is already coming apart. So yeah, I'd have to say that we have this thing. This is definitely done at this point. So it's really only a question of the seasoning. Here we are. Okay. Hi there. Taste test number 2. Hot, hot, hot. You got. I don't. That's the problem.
I could put my mouth on it.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah. Put your mouth on it. I'm not afraid of cooties. It's the same thing. Only I've added more spices as you requested.
Damn, oh.
You wanted more hot.
Give it to him.
Too hot? Too hot now?
It's spicy. It's hot as a bitch. I just put over the sugar.
Now it might actually be too hot, they're saying. Okay. He wants more? Oh man. So one person says it's too hot now. Another person is saying what's still more in there. That definitely needs tomatoes. Too much cayenne?
No, it's good, but put a little bit more cayenne.
More?
Not, where is it? Yeah, don't add no more. It's good.
Yeah, I'd say you add your own to it at this point. How about that? Okay, which means, okay, that needs tomatoes. Yes, I would agree there. Oh yeah, and rice. We do have rice too, that's for sure. Let them add their own heat. Exactly. I think we're at that. Yeah, them spices will thicken it up, and they certainly did. Which would mean, I do believe we have ourselves some bunny chow. However, the way that they all wanted the spices to be doubled, I'm seriously thinking I might actually modify my recipe. But here is our bunny chow, and meanwhile, simmering quietly. It's been simmering now for the past 25 minutes or so. Let's take a look at the rice. Because if the rice is done, then I do believe we are done. And I have to say, this rice looks done. So, that also means you have to fluff the rice, of course. Ooh, look at this. Yes, sir. Haha. This looks like some decent basmati rice. The legs would be preferable if cooking outside. Just plop it in the grounds and surround it with hard charcoal in that case. Exactly, and that is how you do potjiekos in South Africa. All right. I do believe we have it, which means I will start with one small bowl just to show you folks. And then I do think we're calling it a night because we have accomplished what we set out to do. So, just doing a small bowl here. And to this, move over to our steaming hot pot. Oh, yeah, this stuff is really thick now. Take a look. Here it is, folks. Here is our bunny chow. All right. I'm not serving everybody. We've got like about 6 people here, but I did put one bowl together, and anybody feel free to take it because we're done. Oh, there we go. However, as I said, I am going to take their advice, and I think I am going to double the amount of spices we had in the original recipe so that we can be sure that it turns out the way it's turned out right now. Because boy, does this have a nice consistency to it. Look at this. This is not a soup. The chicken is falling apart. The tomatoes are in there. The potatoes, even though they're russet potatoes, they still have some shape to them. So yes, I do believe we've got ourselves a decent stew. All right. And that is that, which means most importantly, well, yeah, most importantly is at least I've enjoyed myself the last hour and a half. But I should also say again, I did this tonight because, again, it has been a dreary, cold, and rainy day here in New York. And this, at least, has certainly helped to warm up the kitchen. And I have no doubt at all that this stew is going to warm up my insides too. So that is definitely, I do feel like we have accomplished our mission here. All right, and good night as well to Granny Graham. Good night to everybody. Hit the like button and thank you so much. William Hurd, as you always say, I'd eat that. Yeah, with a cold one on the side. Yeah, and then again, a cold one on the side is also a necessity for Potjiekos. So that's how we have spent our Cast Iron Wednesday this evening. I do my best, as always, to try to entertain you folks, and I do hope you've enjoyed it, even though it's largely been me talking about Potjies. But then again, as I said, this is really what helps to pass the time for me. I mean, again, we've been in here an hour and a half, and it certainly doesn't feel like it's been that long. So I'm quite happy to have been able to do this. And thank you for coming into my kitchen, Val's Black Cat's Rules, as well. And RT Scott, well, yeah, I got a lot of advice as well. As I said, I'm going to modify the recipe and double the amount of spice in this so that we can definitely get something that's worth remembering. And thank you as well to James456Z. And thank you. And I do hope you've enjoyed yourself tonight. And likewise, Ronald Coward. If nothing else, if it inspires somebody to try it, well, then that is about the best compliment I could possibly get. So I can only thank everybody for that. But thank you to everybody who has been kind enough to show up here. And then good night as well, Honey Badger. I'm sure we'll be seeing you tonight on your Cast Iron Live. And likewise to, I said Ronald Coward already, and JIR Finishes. Oh, I love the smell of this. Definitely increasing the spices was definitely the right thing to do, and I can only thank my family as well for the advice on that. And William Hurt, and have a good night to you too as well, and good night to everybody who has been kind enough to be here because, well, once again, this is something that, as again, I enjoy doing this with all of you folks, and that's one reason why I'm going to keep on doing this, and we will certainly all be doing this again next week. Next week, of course, is we are getting into once again the last Cast Iron Wednesday of the month. And boy, I'm a little hard to believe that it's already the last Cast Iron Wednesday of the month for August of 2025, which means it is going to be Walk Wednesday once again. And I'm going to see what else I can do to ruin food with a cast iron wok. And with any luck, you folks should be interested enough, I hope, to drop by and say hi, and we will have some fun, do it all over again. So take care of yourselves this Wednesday evening, folks. Let's get ready for bed because it is a work night. And thank you very much for being here. And we will once again all be here at the same time next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. And as I always like to say as well, see you next Wednesday.